Hi, welcome back to the Faye Jones School. I am Emily Baker and I'm an assistant professor of architecture here, and I'm also an 05 graduate of the School of Architecture. Today we're going to talk about model making, and we're going to show you some techniques that you can use as part of your design process that deal with making models or miniature versions of your design. I'm standing here by a model of this building that was designed by renowned architect Marlon Blackwell, and he's also a professor here in the School of Architecture. And the model shows the original Volwalker Hall, which was the library building on the University of Arkansas campus originally, but is now part of the School of Architecture and has been for years. This building was expanded by Marlon Blackwell's firm to include a new Stephen L. Anderson Design Center building, and this model shows how those two things have been fused together into one building. Making models has been a part of architecture and design for ages. Even before drawings were used, models were used to test and refine design ideas and to show them to others. This practice is really central to design education as well as the practice of the design professionally. We use physical models to explore our designs, but we also use computers to build digital models of our design ideas, and both of these practices are widely used in schools and in the profession. Models can be made that are exploratory or part of the design process and exploring an idea, or they can be made that are representational and they're about showing that idea to other people. We use a wide variety of materials and levels of refinement with models, and the type of model that a designer chooses to make has a lot to do with what they're trying to explore or show. So as you can see, we have a wide variety of models pulled out to show you today. And the scale of these models is dependent on what we're trying to see or explore within the model. So back here, for example, we have an apartment complex modeled, and you see both the individual apartments, many of them on one site, as well as the exterior spaces in and around that those residents might be using. In this case, here's a model that shows the relationship of a sloped terrain with the building and how the building sets into that terrain. Here we have a couple of models pulled out that were used by students to model an existing design by a well-known architect and to see things like the details of construction and assembly. And here is a model of a city, a slice of a city, and you can see elements like individual buildings, waterways, roadways, and we can find relationships in the city by building a model like this. Here we see an example of some models that were built to only show part of a building, and these models are representative of the experience of a single person potentially. So you see elements like bookshelves, a seating or a table, and then we also are able to explore the way that light interacts coming through an opening in the wall. And then on a very different scale, this is an example of what we might call a prototype, or using real materials to explore the details in a pretty large or full scale. And then the last set that I wanted to talk specifically about is this group of models right here. This was built by a single student over the course of a semester, along, of course, with the drawings and other means of exploration. But you see a real progression here from the beginning where the models are more rough and there's an exploration of form and the way that that building fits onto the site, and then moves to some of the interior spaces that we see in these portions, and you see kind of an iteration or making multiples in order to refine the design. And then finally we see a more finished representational model that sits on a a model of the site. And this model also not only shows the spaces in and around, but we can also open this model and see a representation, a sectional representation of the interior of the building as well.
My name is Nate Cole, and I'm a second-year architecture going on third-year student at the University of Arkansas. And these models right here are created based on a project we got in summer studio called Personal Space. So we were given essentially a flat wall, and within that wall we wanted to create a space in a library where people could read or stop to use a laptop maybe, and also make the space really accessible as well. So initial ideas I tested in sort of a sketch model form. So I have these smaller models down here which kind of illustrate maybe a scaleless idea, but really just trying to get my ideas flowing out of my initial sketches that I put in my sketchbook. So then going into the final model for this project, I chose museum board. It's a really clean material to use, and it's one that we use a lot in summer studio when we're putting out final models. You can see the development of ideas that I tested from my initial study models to here, and kind of some ways that I played with changing those ideas as I went into the final model itself. So I think the important thing that I learned from this project and this style of model making is you really don't have to model the full space to get an idea of the design that you're going for. You don't really have to have, say in this instance, the whole rest of the library, the rest of the floor, or even if this was a module, I don't need a repeated number of them connected together as long as I really get the idea in one. So that's a really efficient way to start testing your ideas. You don't need to model your whole house if you're working on just the back porch. So that would be an idea that I want to give to y'all when you're modeling these ideas.
Hello, my name is Holly Bourne, and I will be going into my third year of interior design school here at FAY Jones. I'm going to show you a model that I created. It is an abstract model of the Stall House, which is located in the Hollywood area of California. I made this model to look the way it does is because I didn't want to make a model of the house, but I wanted to represent the elements that made up the house. The white chipboard part of the model, as you can see here, represents the structural elements of the house. I used brown chipboard to delineate between public and private. The base of my model serves two purposes. One, solely as a base. Two, it represents the topography of the landscape that the Stall House is situated on. The Stall House actually extends past the landscape. The last element that I want to touch on of this model is these red extensions that I've made. They're definitely not a part of the original house, but they're just a part of this model. They help you see the visual aspect that this house is trying to represent. The rungs of this house actually run out of the landscape, and the reason why it does this is that it's trying to carry the viewer's eyes out towards the lower Hollywood city. But yeah, I used white museum board to make these. I just colored them red and I put them on, and they added a really nice touch to this model.
Hi, I'm Cameron. I'm going into my third year of architecture at the FAY Jones School, and I'm going to walk you through a series of models I made that will maybe bring in a little bit of variety into the conversation about model making and what it can do for us. So these are actually cast in concrete, and the idea was to make a series of units that have a similar style or language, but can be aggregated in order to achieve something different in varying ways. The point in showing these models is to prove the point that they are as useful in exploration as they are in representation. These models, like I said, were made probably 2 weeks into a semester, and I made them not with the intention of fully realizing any specific building design, but in getting information and developing ideas that would enhance and inform my building design later on in the semester. So these little ones, were the first step in an exploration of material. What's directly behind them is the continuation or next step in that same process. These aren't made of concrete, but they're made very similar, made out of a plaster. This is a little bit further down the road of what architecture might be in the front of our minds. This is more dealing with a wall condition and using some of these forms that were developed and discovered in the early stages in these initial casts, and taking those ideas, upping the scale a little bit, and developing sorts of corners and apertures and walls.
So we're sitting here in the FAY Jones Model Lab. It's in the basement of Vol Walker Hall. We have some materials across the table here. So we have some chipboard, some basswood, and different colors of museum board. These are some pretty common materials across the school and will be pretty commonly used along with these tools. So on my left side here, we have an X-Acto blade, maybe some right angles if we want to get really precise 90-degree edges. And then we have tape, some glue, a triangle, and then just a basic ruler, 24 inches. And then it's subdivided so that if you don't have a scale, you can essentially count the tick marks on the ruler and use that as your scale. So we're gonna start by cutting out a piece that we have sketched over here, and we have some just basic dimensions to go off of. So we're gonna cut out this piece and then glue it to another piece that we'll use in a model later on. So we have chipboard, and then we'll use a triangle here. We'll get a straight line, like a 90-degree angle to base that off of. So then let's get the first dimension here at the top, so 5 inches. So 5 inches there. And then we can use this straight line that we've already established and set our triangle against it. And take that line down. So then the next dimension we have is 1.5 inches. So let's go ahead and measure that one. There, and do the same thing. So we'll just align that triangle at 90 degrees, and we'll get another line across there. So the next dimension is the same. We'll go to the right. Another 1.5 inches, and this will only go up 5/8 of an inch. So what we can do here, just get a sort of construction line going through. So that'll probably be on the model piece, and we can erase that when we're done. And count 5/8 of an inch. So 5 right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so we have the little tick mark. Align the triangle again and take that line out. All right, so now that we have our base shape here, we can go in with an X-Acto knife and then cut it out. And you'll want to go a couple times and then make sure that your blade is sharp as well. You don't want to be really forceful and try to cut it in one. So now we have that piece cut out. Then we have our other piece from the side over here, and we can attach the two. So usually when gluing, you want to have a little base that you can put glue on, just so that you aren't putting it onto the full material piece itself. Then you can use a little piece kind of like this to spread the glue. So let's go and let's put it along this edge here. So you want to make sure that you have your edges aligned and be as precise as possible. So you hold that for a few minutes and then you'll have that attached. All right, so for the next part, now that we got that piece glued together that you can see right here, we have a larger context of the model, and we're gonna glue together this part and the bottom piece here. So This one's going to attach to the top, so instead of having to measure out where we want to put the glue on this piece, we can just put the glue on the top parts that'll have contact with the top piece. And then the good thing about just putting some glue off to the side is you can put a small amount. If you run out, you can just put some more. It's better than maybe overestimating the amount that you're going to use or using too much on accident on the model itself. So then go in here. All right. And then this piece lines up pretty much exactly with this piece. And now you have these two pieces connected here, and then you see, so there's a point in the back where this piece kind of extends out. So now we're going to show one more technique that's present in this final model that we have, called scoring. So scoring is usually a pretty good way to show texture, or if you want a similar grain, maybe you have vertical scoring that follows with the height of your model. So here we're going to use this little piece of wood that has some tick marks on it that we can just follow, sort of a cheat if you want to measure out ahead of time. And then this is clear, and we can just align this with the grid that we have under the table, luckily. So and we can go in with a ruler and an X-Acto knife again, and just kind of start going along there. So you can start to see when you shift that, when it's not lined up with the white lines, you can see some lines that are starting to show up in the plexiglass here. And you can make those closer together, you can make them more spaced out, and it's just a really cool way to maybe communicate a different type of material in a model. So this final model here, this is something that we would make for presentation. You can see the very clean use of material. You have multiple materials being used for different things, such as the plexiglass used for windows. You have this more opaque kind of plexiglass that's scored in the method that we talked about earlier on both sides. So then another method that we didn't really cover with this model is making terrain, and a good material for that is usually some thick material like cardboard. So what you would do when making this is essentially layer all four of these pieces, and you would want to get them cut as closely to the same size as possible. So then you could go in, say, on the top three of these and cut out a slightly bigger piece as you get to the top, and maybe make a little stair step pattern that you can see here.
So now that we have shown you guys some model making techniques and some examples of models at the school, we're going to bring it more into the home and get out some materials and tools that you can use in your own home to continue your design process. So I have the students here with me, and they have some models that they've made using materials and tools at home, and I'm going to turn it over to them to describe what they made.
This is an example of a model that you should easily be able to find the materials for at home. All this is made of is a cut up cereal box, a Cheez-It box, some aluminum foil, some drafting tape, and some double-sided tape. This is an idea that I developed in the brainstorm portion of this project in these videos. Taking the ideas that I formulated at the Faye and Gus Jones house of a built-in seating area and a fireplace, as well as other connection points to the main house, I've gone ahead and developed a model that will illustrate to me some of those ideas and demonstrate relationships of scale, material, and layout so that I can get a better idea of what I'm making. And the value of this is that I can easily and quickly mock up models very similarly to how I make sketches. And through this process, you're helping yourself to develop ideas and continue on in your design process.
For this model, it looks a little different than everybody else's. It's actually just a sketch model of a single room. The windows that I did in this one were all done with scissors, so it's very easy to do at home. This is a good model to use for when you're wanting to test lighting and how it affects a room. Another step from here would also be adding in scale figures and furniture. It would be really easy to actually get a sense of how the space is going to feel for an actual person in it by using your scale figures and furniture. And it's super easy to like pop things in and out and move it around and just find the pattern of design that actually makes the space feel more comfortable to the inhabitant.
This is my model that I made based off of some of my ideas in the Brainstorming 2 video as well. So you can see there's definitely more of an emphasis on exterior space, and when I was coming up with my original ideas and sketching with some charcoal, I was really interested in changing the patio on the second floor. So I went in and I extended the roof plane, and I just used some aluminum foil from home to display that. And then I also went in and used a different cardboard box to kind of show a change of materiality. On the floor here, I just crinkled up some paper as well to show where you could put some plants and maybe some initial ideas about that. So hopefully you can do some kind of clever experimentation like that with some of these materials you find in your house.
So we pulled some materials out that we can commonly find around the house: cardboard boxes, cereal boxes or drink boxes, and tubes for your paper towels or toilet paper. I've got some aluminum foil and parchment paper over here, toothpicks, things like that. And you might find any number of other materials around your house, but these are some really common ones that have been useful. So we showed you part layout, cutting, and assembly in the previous part of the video at school. And we've picked up some tools that you may have around your house. You probably have some scissors and obviously something to draw with, a pen or pencil. Some of you may be able to find a utility knife at home, and those can also be useful in cutting, but we just want to make sure that you either have a cutting mat or you put down cardboard or another hard material onto the tabletop that you're going to be cutting on. And we picked up some glue as well and some masking tape to round out the set of materials. So I'm going to turn it over to Holly, and she's going to show you some techniques to use to make your own models.
When we start to craft models, we usually pick out a certain scale that we're going to use and have it consistently throughout the model making process. So before we begin to make our actual model, we are going to make a scale figure at 1/4 inch equals 1 foot. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we're going to mark our spot. That's 6 foot at 1/4 inch equals 1 foot scale. So we've got our mark made, and typical width of a person is about 1.5 feet, maybe a little less than that. So we're just going to go over here and find 1/4 on our ruler, and then 1/2 of a quarter, which is 1/8, and we're going to make it that wide. Also, when you make your scale figures, if you want them to stand up on their own, it's important to make a base so that they can stand freely, instead of having to glue them down so that you can move them about the space wherever you please. An easy way to do that is to take your abstract one right here, or whichever one that you've made, and we're going to make a slit right there. And then we're going to make a slit right here into this piece. Then we're going to join the two. And it stands freely now. Now we're going to start by actually making our model. Here I have just a regular cardboard box, and I'm going to start out by taking one of the flaps on the side and just cutting it off. From here you can take this piece, you can make a base out of it, you can also use it to construct your walls. It's just whatever you want to do. We're going to set this aside for right now and start making our actual room. For this, I've chosen this LaCroix box. It's a little thinner than our cardboard, and it'll work great for making walls, and it'll be easier to cut windows out of. I'm going to create a 12 by 15 room at 1/4 inch equals 1 foot scale. That way it's nice and big enough that we can actually, use our scale figure, put furniture in it and actually get a good read on the room and how it's going to affect the person inhabiting it. We're going to make our tick mark. We're going to come over here. And 3 was 12 1/4, so 12, 13, 14, and 15. So we're at 15, 1/4 inch scale. So now we have a box. This is your base and your guide to making your room. So I'm going to cut it out with scissors. Now that we have our base, I'm going to show you the score and fold technique in order to make your walls. It's super easy, it's effective, and it makes for nice, clean, crisp, consistent walls throughout. We're just going to take this piece right here, the pieces that I told you to save for later. We know that this side is 15. We know that this side is 12. So we're going to add 15 and 12, which is 27. So our length of our piece that we're going to cut needs to be 27 1/4. So we want the brown side, the clean side, to be on the inside of our model because that's where we're going to do most of our investigation, and we want a nice clean surface for that. So now I'm going to take my ruler and use it as a straight edge. I'm going to line it just on that line that we just created. I'm going to take my scissors, I'm going to open them up, choose the side that I want to use the score with. I'm going to run it right down that line. We don't want to cut all the way through, just enough that where it will bend a clean bend. Okay, now that we've made a wall and we have our base, I'm going to show you how to attach the two by using tape. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my edge piece of tape and I'm going to put it on the edge of the bottom part of my wall. Only halfway through though. It's going to look something like that. Now that I have that part down, I'm going to align it to the base, or to my base, and I want to be gentle not to press the tape down to where it's going to adhere until we're ready. So I'm going to take this, and I've found my corner, and I've lined my edges up, almost. I now have my edges lined up, and I'm going to run my fingernail right in that crease to adhere it to both pieces. Now we're going to make our other wall and add an aperture, and an easy way to measure this is to use your base so you don't have to spend all that time actually measuring out the length. So it was right there and right there. So I'm just going to run over and do one real quick. Just a simple square, nothing fancy. I'm going to take my scissors, which I'm going to take this part, and I'm going to gently poke a hole, which you can use a pencil to start this. And I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut me out a window. There we have it. We have made a window aperture in our model. Now that we've got our sketch model to where we want it, we've attached it to the base, and as you can see here, I have drawn out a plan of what I want to do and what I want to represent. This right here will be hardscape, like paving, pathways, things like that. And this right here will be a yard. Notice you really can't tell the difference right now because there's no texture delineating from which is which that is what I'm about to show you how to do. So for here, we want this to be a yard. We want it to be a different texture than this and this. So I'm using my piece of cardboard that I had earlier that I said we were going to use for our base, and it's corrugated in between. So I want to use that corrugated section of this to represent the softscape, which is the yard. So by doing that, or to achieve doing that, I'm going to take an X-Acto blade, which you can use scissors, it's no big deal. I'm going to just use this. So I'm going to run my blade across the cardboard, not cutting all the way through it, just enough that I want to get this top layer off. Now we have our softscape that is being represented, and it was super easy to do, and I actually didn't have to do any cutting myself to make the texture, just that small section right there. The great thing about this model is that you can pick it up and have different configurations of your space, furniture configurations, lighting configurations. The possibilities are endless. The model is your tool to educate yourself on things that can be done to your model and what you can do to make it better or achieve what you're trying to achieve.
Now that you have learned some techniques that you can use at home to make your own models, we hope that you'll continue to explore and build on what we've shown you. One fun thing that you can do is to create pieces of furniture at the same scale as your model, and you can move those pieces of furniture around and notice how that affects the design of the space. You could add plantings in your outdoor spaces, seating areas, and other landscape elements to the design. As we saw in the previous segment, you could even create a sloped landscape and set your building into that. There's lots of things that you can do to explore this. So there's even the option to digitally model something and then send that digital file to certain companies that will 3D print things, your designs, and send them back to you in the mail. You could 3D print a piece of furniture of your own design and put it into your own model, or any number of things that you could think to do. So I just want to encourage you guys to have fun with this, to get creative with the materials and that you can find around your house, and to expand your design and expand your process through making things. Thank you.